last week on QP Youth, we began a new series. God so loved the world. Good news for a hurting planet. And in QP Youth last week, we spent a bit of time thinking about the first 25 verses of the Bible. Thinking about Genesis 1, verses 1 to 25, and about God as creator. And we were thinking about creation right up until just bore God creates people, before he makes mankind. And over this week, I've been thinking a lot about God creating people. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at verse 26 on into chapter 2 as well. I mean, reflecting on God creating people and thinking, what was it God created us for? And I think we're given the answer to this question really quickly in the verses that we're going to look at today. Because it says in verse 26, God said, let us make mankind in our own image. In other words, God the Trinity makes the decision to create us in his image. To make us to be like him. Now, no other part of creation is referred to as being made in the image of God. Sometimes maybe we talk about going and looking at something in creation to help us think about who God is, or maybe it reflects something of who God is. Like, I love going to the beach and looking at the vastness of the sea and watching the crashing waves and the power that there is in them and thinking, do you know what? God is amazing. He's powerful. He's awesome and mighty. But the waves himself are not made in his image. Only people are made in the image of God. That means there's something extra special about people, something that differentiates people from the rest of creation. So God creates us to be in his image. But what does that actually mean? I don't know if you've ever looked at somebody next to their parents and thought, whoa, you are so like your parents. Maybe it's you look at somebody and look at their dad and you think, do you know what, the two of you react in the same way to things, or you pull the same faces. Maybe you look really alike. Maybe you see somebody next to their mum and how they are interacting with others is very similar to one another. That's what God has done with us in creating us in his image. We're made to be his sons and daughters, created as his sons and daughters. And he has made us to be like him. That means our characteristics should be like God. It means that the way we respond to things should be like God would respond to them. It means that we're made to be creative, just like God himself is creative. Now, next week we're going to think a little bit about why some of that doesn't always line up, why maybe the way we respond isn't always like the way God would want to respond to something, or why we make certain decisions and things like that. But ultimately we were created to be like him, to be in his image. But more than just being created to be in his image, we're created to be the bearers of his image to the rest of creation. We are made to be a representative of God here on earth, to take care of what he has created. And later on in the Bible, it says that we are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God. We're created to be ambassadors of God here on earth, to represent him amongst the creation. An ambassador is someone who is sent by a head of state to represent that head of state in another country, to represent the country they come from elsewhere. And we are sent here to represent God among creation. And in being the bearers of his image, to treat creation the way he would want it to be treated. Do you know, if you look around at lots of other religions in the world and how people go about worshipping, you'll notice that they'll go to temples or to some kind of religious building, and within those buildings will be statues representing the God that they are worshipping. But in Exodus, God says that we should make no idols. In other words, he's saying to us, don't make statues to worship. Don't make statues to try to be a representative of me, because you yourselves are already an image of me on earth. You don't need a statue made of wood or marble or gold, because you have living statues, and you are my living statues. I love the way that Pete Hughes puts that in his book, saying that we are to be the living statues of the God who created us, to be an image of him for the rest of the world. And we get to be an image of him for one another, for others in this world, but also for the rest of creation. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about what that means for us. What does it mean to be responsible for creation, to take responsibility for it? And as I said, next week we're going to think a little bit about what has gone wrong along the way.